you been trying to get your art business going, working really hard to sell art, and then not selling as much as you think you should be? Well, you might be making one of these 6 mistakes. The first is making art within a niche that doesn't sell well. There are so many different types of artwork that you can create, but one of the things that I've learned from selling artwork full-time for the last 10 years is that certain subject matter always sells better than others. When you're going to an art fair and you see all these different types of booths, one of the things that you will see, there'll be a certain number of landscape artists, a number of animal artists, that's what I create, and a number of abstract artists, also a certain number of artists who are making portraits based on pop culture figures or cartoon characters. And the reason why you see this at every art fair, several artists in each of these niche categories, is because these types of subjects always sell. So then if you pick something, let's say landscapes, then all you have to do is figure out how to get your work to stand out among all the other landscape artists who are applying to the show, so that way you will get into the art fair, and then who are selling there in person at the show. Because when customers are walking by all of the booths and they're thinking about wanting to buy a landscape, they're going to see something that catches their eye. So all you have to do is make your work a little bit better or a little bit more unique than the rest in the customer's eyes. Now, this isn't always easy, but I've found that I differentiate myself well if I use really bright colors to paint animals in a somewhat realistic style, but a style that goes beyond what you normally see with your eyes to show something deeper within each animal. And I found that this really strikes a chord with viewers and my audience at art fairs and when I'm selling online. I'd also like to say that you don't have to have your work fit into one of these categories, but it does make it a whole lot easier. And if you've been struggling, not able to sell work, you might try making artwork in one of these categories, figuring out how you are going to differentiate yourself from everyone else who is making that type of artwork, and then see if it does work for you. The next is being inconsistent when you are producing work rather than being prolific. I think this is so important. As an artist, if you're just making artwork sporadically, like maybe one piece a month or one piece every couple of months, you're not really churning out your work, you're kind of just doing it maybe on the side, you're not focusing on it with all of your energy, then you're not going to improve. And honestly, artistic skill, although it doesn't mean everything when it comes to selling your work, because I've seen a lot of artists sell their work who are not very good at it, honestly. They're better at doing sales, and so the sales process that they use helps them to sell their work. But when you really think about it, if you're a consumer walking into somebody's booth, if you can see that they have a lot of skill, then you're more likely interested in buying, right? I mean, I know I am. And so this is why having a better skill level within your work is super important. And how are you going to get that? Unless you are making a lot of work. You have to practice and make so many pieces, make mistakes, happy accidents, breakthroughs, so that way you will improve. And the better your artwork gets, the more unique it gets, the more wow factor it has compared to all of the other artists in whatever venue you're selling at, whether it's in person at art fairs or online. The more that you can make your work better, the more likely you are going to be able to sell it, because you're going to be able to catch the customer's eye. Then of course you need to know some more sales tactics to be able to get that person who is interested to follow through and get them to actually purchase. But having perfected your artistic skill helps catch your customer's eye in the first place. The next is being unwilling to self-promote or not being very consistent with the promotion. You gotta realize if you want to succeed in your art business, you want to sell art, then you're going to have to promote yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So this means that you're going to need to post about your work on social media in a way that's going to get customers to buy. It also means that you're going to have to put yourself out there, most likely selling in in-person situations like art fairs, markets. If you just make a website, sit back and hope people are going to come to buy, it's just not going to happen. Next, and this one is a a big problem that a lot of artists have, and often it's hard to recognize that you have this problem. I know I've been here before myself as well. And it's the unwillingness to change, or not being able to look at what you're doing, how you're trying to sell your art, and realize that it's time to pivot. Personally, this is why it took me many years to start making a full-time living, because I wasn't willing to change what I thought was right about what I was doing with my art business. Back then, before I started doing art fairs, I didn't want to invest the money that it took to do art fairs, to get my booth and everything I needed to set up and do shows. Also, it seemed like there were a lot of skills that I needed to be able to sell work in person in that way. And I didn't have them, didn't know how to get them. And so for me, it was sort of scary, and I was apprehensive about all of it, didn't really know if I wanted to spend the money. And I was also subconsciously unwilling to change because of all of those things. And so I kept for years trying to sell my work in coffee shops and having small exhibitions in really small hole-in-the-wall galleries in small towns in the middle of nowhere, where obviously I wasn't going to be able to make a living from this. I mean, looking back, but at the time I thought that's what I could do because the cost of investment was low, and all it took was a little work for me to go and set up my artwork in these locations and try to sell. And I would make a few sales, like maybe $50 or $100 a show, which I didn't know if that was good, but at least it was something, right? I wasn't having to spend a lot of money and potentially lose a lot of money doing art fairs, because the costs of these types of events can be really high. So because of that, it took me years to finally decide to pivot and change my strategy. And when I did, it completely changed the trajectory of my art business. So if I can emphasize anything in this video, is start to examine every aspect of your art business, everything you're trying to do, and see what's working, what isn't. And if none of it's working, completely step out of your comfort zone and try something different, because that different thing might be the key that unlocks a completely different future for you in your art business. Next is either undervaluing your work or overvaluing it. I see a lot of artists do this, especially beginners. They overvalue their work. They price their work too high. From my perspective, you can always start low in your prices, get a few sales under your belt, and then raise your prices later, slowly over time, to where the market will show you where your prices should be resting at. For example, if you are making a 16 by 20 painting and you start out with selling them for $300, if you realize that that $300 price point is selling your work fairly quickly, then you should raise your prices to $400 or $500, maybe $600, and then see if people continue to buy your work. If they don't, then you might want to back off and decrease your prices a little bit by running a sale every now and then to get people to purchase your work. You'll just have to see where your work fits within the market, who your customer base is, and what they are willing to pay. Don't compare yourself and your work, especially when you're first starting out, to other artists who've been doing this for like a decade and they're selling that same 16 by 20 inch painting for $4,000, because you are not them. You have not put in the reps. Now, you might get lucky and you might be able to sell a couple paintings at the $4,000 level when you first get started. But if you want to be consistently selling your work, then I think it's better to start lower and then raise your prices as the market indicates. Next is giving up too easy. I see artists doing this a lot, and I think this is a common thing, right? You're trying something, for instance, an art fair, or listing some products on Etsy or eBay. You try to list a few or just do one art fair, and it doesn't really make you any money, or maybe you even lose money on it. And a lot of time you get frustrated and you're like, well, I'm not doing that again. You gotta realize, with all of the different methods of selling your work, there is a learning curve. There are so many different things to learn. So if you think you're going to go to an art fair the first time and make tons of money, I mean, you might make some money, but you're not going to make nearly as much money as you will after doing art fairs for a year or two. You'll start to refine your skill at all the different tasks that are involved. And so if I can give you any closing tip, is just to stick with it. And if you realize that it's not working, whatever you're trying to do to sell your work, then pivot and try something else. All right, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.